So here we go. We will going to have our new topic, that is hypersensitivity, and what is the molecular reason behind different versions or hypersensitivities related to molecular immunology or our immune system. We will going to see about the most, I must say, dangerous. It's not dangerous. Yes, dangerous is anaphylaxis. It's considered as one of the most dangerous immune reaction, and we will see how these different types of hypersensitivity problems are there as a threat for the very much survival of human lives. Okay, so all set. Let's move to the next slide. So the aims and objective of this lecture, I will going to cover this lecture in 2 fragments based on the time we are having at this time left with. We will try to understand what is hypersensitivity, what is allergy, what is autoimmunity and autoimmune diseases. I mean, that was a question which was asked by different students repeatedly in different during different lectures in the past 3 months. So we will going to address this concept in more detail in this lecture, in the next lecture as well. We will try to understand the mechanism of hypersensitivity, or how many different types of hypersensitive reactions are out there. Type I hypersensitivity, type II hypersensitivity, type III hypersensitivity, they are different, in type 4 as well. All of these 4 different types of hypersensitivities have different molecular mechanisms. So earlier, you might only know about an hypersensitive reaction based on our immune system, but with this lecture, I will try to teach you the molecular reasons behind those different types of hypersensitive reactions or hypersensitive disorders. So let's go. The first thing is a very simple and easy, that how you should be able to understand the difference between these a few wonderful definitions. The first and the foremost is what is actually the hypersensitivity by definition. It's an exaggerated response, or inappropriate is a appropriate word, I believe. I mean, somebody is showing response more than normal. If there is a trouble and the size of the trouble is this one, if this is the problem, this is the level of the problem, you should be able to see the problem with this magnitude. But if the actual problem is of this size and you are looking at the problem like this, then you are supposed to be overthinking. And the similar type of trouble is there with our immune system as well. Sometimes our immune system look or see or observe the threat which is supposed to be that big in this way. So this type of response is called as hypersensitivity response or exaggerated immune reaction. Somebody was not very much toxic, but your immune system will start fighting a lot with that thing. And then there is an allergy. It's also a hypersensitivity reaction, but that is traditionally through an extrinsic, a foreign, an outside factors. When there is an outsider, there is an antigen coming from outside, which is not supposed to be bad, which is not that bad. We can fine with it, but your body started responding to that thing. And this is what we call as allergy. Like we are living in an environment, we all are living, in an environment with a lot of dust particles and things present in the air and in our water. So these dust particles, or the small particles, it may be pollens, it may be small grains, we are living with those things. Most of us can inhale those small particles, and our immune system consider these small particles as fine, as nice, as nothing, but it's not a threat. It does not consider it as a threat. But what if If somebody's immune system is started fighting against those small little microparticles which are not supposed to be bad, which are not supposed to be threat, but that person's immune system will started reacting or fighting against those things, so such thing is called as allergy. मसलन ये एक famous response भी है when we are like passing through a place जहां पर काफी dust हो, a dusty place. Some of us started coughing, I mean, violently, and usually that is the person who can claim that he has a dust allergy. Most of us can claim, it's a fashion, that I am having a dust allergy. It's a way of telling other people that I used to live in a very clean environment, but I can tell you, dust allergy, having a dust allergy is a very, very I mean, unfortunate situation, because it triggers a very strong reaction from the body. आंखें सूज जाती हैं, खांसना शुरू कर देता है इंसान. It's very difficult for the person to stop the cough and to deal with the situation. And that same dust is entering into the lungs of another person. The same dust particles are entering into the lungs of that person. But that person, which is hypersensitive, that person's immune system will start fighting against the dust particle. Although not fighting against the dust particle is still fine. Not fighting against the dust particle is still okay. But that person's immune system is hypersensitive and started fighting against a foreign factor. And that can lead to the allergy. You should be able to understand that thing. And then the autoimmunity. Now the autoimmunity is a response. It's a very specific response against the self antigens. So, I mean, there are a lot of antigens in our body, and we are living with all those antigens present in our body comfortably. These are all are considered as the self. But if something which is labeled as self, our immune system will started considering that stuff which is labeled as self, started considering that thing as non-self, then our immune system will start fighting against it. Then our immune system will start fighting against that stuff. Now, this stuff is an antigen, belongs to us. Our immune system should not supposed to fight against that antigen. But if because of some XYZ reason, our immune system fails to distinguish between the self and the non-self, and started considering that self stuff as a non-self and start fighting against it, that is called as an autoimmune, and that situation is called as autoimmunity. And disease is an it will lead to a disease which is called as autoimmune disease. It's a very unfortunate and dangerous situation, because you never know, you have no choice. You cannot convince your immune system, oh, please, this is a self, this is something which belongs to us, we do not need to fight against that thing. So that is an autoimmunity, and that can lead to a disease which is called as autoimmune disease. So we will going to study all of these things like in detail in the upcoming slides. Okay, just stay brave and stay strong with me. पहले असाइनमेंट नहीं बतानी चाहिए, फिर वो आपको डिफ्यूज कर देती है. Okay, so let's start with the mechanism of allergy and autoimmunity. Okay, there are a lot of classifications. The most famous of them, the gel and the Kuhn's, which I will going to share with you. There are 4 types of hypersensitive reactions. One is called as type 1, the other is called as type 2, type 3, and type 4. The type 1 is like is called as anaphylactic or immediate, and I can tell you, you can rate this thing as the most worst. It's a worst form of immune reaction you can relate. So it's quite dangerous. It can cost a life. I can tell you, it can cost a life. The anaphylactic response of immune system can take the life away, and that belongs to type 1 hypersensitivity. Our job is to see the molecular mechanism at a cellular level behind these type of immune reactions. And in an anaphylactic or immediate hypersensitive reactions, usually it results in the in swelling of eye, and it can also it can also affect the overall well-being of that person at that time. And in no time, the person will feel that it is very difficult for that person to keep the breathing level at a normal state. And if it is not treated on time, it can lead to the death as well. Now see how it happens because of a certain XYZ antigen, because of a certain chemical present out there, how it actually leads to this sudden and immediate reaction, anaphylactic reaction in the person's body. Okay, so there is an allergen, there is an antigen. The term allergen, you can separate this term from an antigen, but not very much. Antigen is anything which can trigger the immune system. It's called as antigen. That's more or less we can make a sense out of it. Now, some of them are bad. Some of the particles are good, and some of the antigens are actually, they are causing a lot of trouble. They are bad. Some of the antigens are bad. If the antigen is like not causing any trouble, if an antigen is not causing any trouble, that should not be an antigen. That should be self. So there are certain molecules which are not causing any trouble. You can consider them good because they are not triggering any immune response. They are not supposed to be antigens. But if they're able to trigger the APCs, if they're able to trigger the immune system, such material is called as allergen. So allergen are not supposed to be antigens, but they just happen to become an antigen because the person's immune system will start reacting towards them. So if an allergen of a chemical or a molecule or a protein molecule or a small molecule, peptide, carbohydrate, glycolipid, a particle from the bacteria, a particle from the virus, or whatever the hell, it might be very simple. It might be very complicated. Like it's a material coming from the peanut butter. It may be a chemical or a material coming from a particular drug or a medication. Who knows? But whenever there is an allergen, there is a chemical which is not supposed to induce an immune system. If that chemical is recognized by our immune system, by our APCs as a bad stuff, the APC will try to fight. The APC will try to fight with that thing. The APC will try to capture and will try to present that thing on their surface as well. The next step, the APC will going to share that information with the T cells, and more accurately with the Th2 cells. The Th2 cells will receive. I am not going to explain all these things. हमने पूरा semester लगाया उसके ऊपर. Okay, the APCs will going to talk with the T cells, and the T cells will going to show their response. And what will be the response? The response will be like the interleukin 4, interleukin 13, and blah blah things, and then they will trigger. They will support the beta cells, and beta cells will going to produce plasma cells. The plasma cells will going to produce antibodies. Now these antibodies have two ends. These antibodies have two ends. Now there was a bad thing which is not supposed to be bad. There is a thing which is not supposed to be bad, and that thing enters into the body. It actually considered as bad, captured by the immune cells, trigger the immune reaction and produce the antibodies. Now that antibody has two ends. One of the end is dedicated to capture the immune cell. One side of that antibody is dedicated to capture an immune cell. The other side of the antibody is dedicated to touch or to capture or to recognize the antigen. Now in this case, this is the antigen and this is the response cell, a mast cell. This is one of the examples. A mast cell is supposed to react against the antigen. So the specific antibodies which were created out of this reaction, they have two ends. One of the end fits that antibody with an immune cell, and that immune cell in this case is the mast cell. And you know, mast cells produce chemicals, and those chemicals then trigger the immune reaction. Those chemicals will going to create inflammation. Those chemicals will going to induce vasodilation, and then they attract other immune cells to the place and can also kill the bad things around them. So this is a mast cell. So that antibody which is produced as a result of this allergen, this antibody is bind itself with the mast cells from one end, and then the other end, which is called as, agar aapko yaad hoga, FC portion of the antibody. This one, Forman Christian College. FC portion, this side. The FC portion is the one which can touch or capture the antigen. Now, in this case, who is the antigen? The antigen is that allergen. I'm not using the proper word of antigen because actually it is not an antigen. We should be able to survive without it. We should not react against it. It's safe. But somehow our immune system, yahan par gadbad hui hai. Somehow our immune system is not able to distinguish this thing perfectly and started considering that stuff as a non-self and created an antibody. Those antibodies will cover the mast cells. So jahan pe mast cells hain, all those mast cells are labeled with the antibody. Now guess, this antibody is special because this antibody contains a fragment which is specifically designed to capture the allergen, Now, if a person's body is carrying the mast cells labeled with the antibodies, and the person receives the same trouble, the same allergen once again. Now, at this time when that allergen enters into our body, this is not a new reaction anymore. The body contains lots of mast cells present in different parts of the body. Those mast cells carrying the antibodies, those antibodies are created and designed to capture the same problem, the same allergen. So once the allergen enters into the body again, all the mast cell will start reacting against that antigen. All the mast cells will going to capture that allergen and will start responding at the same time. This sudden reaction, this sudden response is lead to that situation which actually cause a lot of inflammation in different parts of the body and also consume lots of immune resources in no time. The body will be vulnerable for other diseases and also is not able to execute the normal body functions at that time. So you need to reverse that function immediately at that time in order to live, in order to survive. And such response is called as anaphylactic response. It may be sometimes because of pollens. Pollens can do the job. It's fine for many people, but for some people, unfortunately, it can trigger that reaction. House dust might. It's a very strong reason for that thing. Sometimes peanut butter. This is a very big culprit. कुछ लोगों को होता है इस जिनको नहीं पता उसको उनको पता है. Bee venom वो भी ये काम कर सकती है. So consider the first thing, when the first time the allergen enters into the body, it creates a situation called priming. Priming means the immune system will start reacting that allergen. The immune system is creating the response, means the antibodies. This thing is called as sensitization. Our immune system becomes sensitive against that thing. And our immune system is not supposed to be sensitive against that thing. But now, unfortunately, it became sensitive. And the last thing is that if the same allergen enters into the body once again, all the mast cells we are carrying, most of the mast cells we are carrying, they will going to react suddenly and they will going to create, they will produce the chemicals, and those chemicals will going to trigger certain, physiological disorders at that time, like hay fever, like asthma, and worst of them is anaphylaxis. Hope this thing explains the type 1 hypersensitivity well. This slide just explains more information about the activity during the most of the allergic reactions, that how those mast cells will going to affect the overall well-being of the individual. It's physiological effect of the mast cells. Once the mast cells start reacting and producing their products, they produce these things, and these things will going to activate the immune cells in totality, in general. They will attract the neutrophils to the side, they will attract the eosinophils to the place, they will attract monocytes and basophils. So they actually activate the other cells and call them to the place of reaction. They also produce these chemicals which are activators, which speeds up the immune reaction at that time and activate many of the immune reactions. Vasodilation, you might remember, histamines ye kaam karti hain, if you can guess. And then we have like spasmogens, which do other functions and other troubles. So I suggest these are the output or physiological outcomes of the overactivation of the mast cells. Okay, the activation of mast cell is required against the real bad things. But if the stuff is not that bad, मतलब अगर एक pollen air में मौजूद है coming from the flower, if that pollen is not going to create a disease, our immune system should spare it. Our immune system should not react against that pollen. And most of us can bear a specific amount of pollens in the air. But during the summer times, before the summer times, especially during the springs, when there is a lot of pollens are present in the air, some of the unfortunate people and their immune system will start reacting against those pollens. वो दवाई खाते हैं लेकिन वो ठीक नहीं होते, इसको ऐसे लोगों को बोलते हैं pollen allergy. Particularly in the densely vegetative areas, जहां पर बहुत सारा flowers, plants, vegetation होती है, खासतौर पे इस्लामाबाद में आपने नोट किया होगा, those people will experience more pollens in the air as compared to the other people in other cities. So their immune systems will start reacting against the pollens. So they try to reduce their immune reaction. They try to take chemicals which can slows down their mast cells function. So they should not respond violently against those chemicals present in the air. So this is a simplified version that how after the priming cells get sensitized, they activate the T cells, the Th2 cells, produce those interleukins, calls the beta cells. Beta cells produce antibodies, and those antibodies then layers the mast cells. And remember, those antibodies can capture and can attach themselves with the mast cells at one end, and they can specially designed to capture the allergen or the antigen from the other side. So if the antigen if the cells of the body encounter the same antigen once again, the mast cells are all set because they were already trained and ready to show their response, and they will going to create a lot of chemicals and a lot of response out there. That is called as the type I hypersensitivity reaction. Okay, so allergic rhinitis or hay fever is an example of type I hypersensitivity. Anaphylaxis, you should study this thing more. Okay, it's a very dangerous situation. It's a medical emergency, and there is a drug out there to reduce the functions of our immune system at that time so that the person might survive. Okay, you should be able to see all this. And then there exists a skin prick test for allergy as well. Sometimes we don't know that our body is showing over reaction or hypersensitivity. So sometimes we are not able to figure it out that our body is responding against what type of chemical. I mean, we are living with a lot of things. I am living with this fabric material. I might be wearing the leather on the other day. I might be wearing certain black bracelets or you know, the rings or the earrings, or I mean certain things. I am like my body is came in touch regularly. If I am developing an overreaction, if I am developing a hypersensitive reaction, the first thing the doctor should know that what is the reason, who is the allergen. The first thing is to find the allergen. So there was a very famous prick test to analyze, to understand that your body is responding or reacting against what type of chemical more than the others. So there are 30, 40 different types of things they place on your skin for a certain period of time. And after that, what will happen? Your immune system will start sense that stuff and then start making reactions. Like it might be, you can imagine, there might be a paper clip can be placed besides your skin, and it can be tested that your skin react to the paper skin or not, so to the paper clip or not. So different types of materials are placed on the skin, and you can figure it out. If the reaction is a lot, you can guess that this is an allergen for you. If the reaction is a lot, this might be an allergen for you. This is not supposed to be an allergen. This is fine. This is not supposed to be an allergen. So all these chemicals have their names. I don't know. This is the chemical 1, chemical 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The doctor at the same time can test lots of chemicals by this by physically interacting those chemicals with your immune system outside the body to check whether your immune system reacts, consider that thing as bad or not. If your immune system consider that chemical as bad, your immune cells will accumulate here and try to see what's going on, try to fight with that thing, what that stuff is. And that is an indication that this material is attracting your immune system. This material is actually causing problem in your immune system, and this material is considered as the non-self. इसकी दूसरी एग्जांपल भी है, वो मैं आगे जाके आपको दूंगा टाइप 4 इम्यून के अंदर. The next is the type 2 antibody mediated hypersensitivity. So it is called as antibody mediated hypersensitivity. So if you are all set with me, अगर आप लोग परेशान नहीं है, घबराए नहीं है, तो हम इसको आगे कंटिन्यू कर सकते हैं.